And then we get to some more interesting things. And again, not a lot of people talk about this, at least in my estimation, but this is where the draft for me gets really interesting. Because we know who the top few picks are going to be. We know who the best players are going to be. But when you start to get to 5, and there's Seattle versus, via that trade with Denver for Russell Wilson, they have a lot of needs. It would be really easy to take an interior defensive lineman, but I kind of don't think they'll go there. And the reason is because on my board, there's a guy sitting there that at the 5th pick, there's a lot of value in him. All the things I said about Will Anderson, I can say also about Tyree Wilson, the edge player from Texas Tech. Now, this is a guy that I didn't know a lot about. I'll be real honest. And then we did the game this last year, Gus and I, TCU hosting Texas Tech. And talking to people, first of all, studying Texas Tech on film and watching this guy dominate, watch him bend and the explosiveness on the edge, his ability to also stop the run, drop down into the C gap if he needs to, or B gap if he needs to. All of those things are impressive. And I was like, man, this guy is really, really good. Talked to some scouts, and I'm like, man, there's some scouts that are very high on him. And then I talked with the coaching staff and the opposing coaching staff, so Texas Tech and then TCU. And then I was sold. I was absolutely sold, save for one thing. I just wanted to see him in person. It's one thing to see it on tape. It's another thing to see it in person. And there is a difference, folks. I'm telling you, when you see one of these guys that is going to be a tremendous edge player at the National Football League level, it looks different in person. Go down onto the field, for warm-ups of that game, and I immediately see Tyree Wilson. I mean, that's why I'm down there. Yeah, I want to say hello to the coaches and things like that. But you know what? I'm sorry. Like, I was there to see Wilson, and I just sat there and I was just like, okay, yep. That's exactly what it looks like. That's exactly what it looks like. And so I think Seattle takes Tyree Wilson. And listen, I understand there's some people probably out there thinking to themselves, hold on, you're passing someone up that's pretty good. I understand that, and more on that in a moment. Because now here's the Lions via that Rams pick. And the Lions need a lot of defensive help. I think that they're pretty good offensively, and they need a lot of defensive help. Now, they've tried to address some things on the secondary. They need some help on the interior. They need some help, obviously, stopping the run. I think that they need help on 3rd down. You could obviously pair a pass rusher up on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson. They're going defense. There's a lot of really good defensive players here. When I look at the Lions, I look at a team that looks at the division they're in all of a sudden, an Aaron Rodgers-less division, at least we think. And what, Bears? Vikings? Do we really think the Vikings are going to win that many one-score games again? They've got to be thinking to themselves, hey, we got something here. And there's a guy that I really love at corner, and I saw him at Colorado when no one knew him. And then he goes to Oregon, and now everybody knows him. And I like Christian Gonzalez here to the Lions. I think that you look at what they've done in the secondary, and I know that they've addressed it in the draft, and they've addressed it some in free agency as well. But his length, everything I just said about Tyree Wilson, you can also say about Christian Gonzalez. He just looks the part, and he's the type of guy that you can easily project into being a number 1 corner and a guy that can be a really lockdown guy. And one of the ways that you can improve young pass rushers is give them some good quality cover corners so that the ball can't come out of the quarterback's hand quickly. So how do you help Aiden Hutchinson? You give him some good quality secondary players, and I think that they can do that with Christian Gonzalez. Now, if you're not screaming yet about, like, where is Jalen Carter, then you don't know what's going on. And I hear you, so I'm going to address it right now. I believe that Seattle and Detroit could very easily take Jalen Carter. The problem is there's a lot of red flags with Jalen Carter. There are. Now, his talent might supersede those, if that's the correct term, or outweigh, his talent might outweigh the red flags for some organizations, and he might very well be picked with one of those picks. But, you look at the way this process has gone for him, and it has not gone well, the off-field issues, obviously the horrific incident stemming from the drag racing in which 2 people lost their lives. That's obviously really tough, and he's right in the middle of that. The pro day goes horribly wrong, totally out of shape, overweight, 9 pounds. 9 pounds. Got to tap out basically, and this whole I'm only going to meet with teams in the top 10. I guess, and I get it, and you've got to really believe in yourself, and I know that he's got really reputable people representing him, and they know exactly what's going on. And so, listen, is he going to be in my top 10? Yes, I'm going to tell you he's going to be in my top 10. But those are the reasons why I think that Seattle and Detroit might pass on him. I don't think Dan Campbell wants to take a flyer on a guy that might not be great in the locker room. We all watched Hard Knocks, right? Like, we kind of understand Dan Campbell, his way, what he's trying to do with Detroit. So why did Detroit, Joel, pass on Jalen Carter? Well, it's that reason. I don't think he fits. And so if I'm making that pick and I'm trying to look at Detroit and I'm trying to see what they're trying to build, I'm not going to take him. All right, so now let's go to the 7th pick in the draft. So the 7th pick in the draft, and this is another interesting part for me, is that generally speaking, when you get into a draft, what you'll see is a couple of guys in a position group get selected right away. Because someone, has, and this is what happens in these rooms, is that they'll have 2 guys on their board at a position. They'll be like, we're really confident in either one of those 2 guys. Hard to we're splitting hairs here. It's a razor's edge. But after that, maybe we've got a bit of a margin on our board. Okay, so now Christian Gonzalez, it gets taken off the board. And here's the Raiders. And I think that the Raiders are looking at this, and maybe they're looking at a guy like Witherspoon from Illinois, the corner, who basically excelled in man coverage. They were a really good defense, Illinois, right? Brett Bielema did a heck of a job. And, Ryan Walters, who was the defensive coordinator, now the head coach at Purdue, he did a wonderful job with that defense at Illinois, and they ran man coverage. Witherspoon is going to major in man coverage. He's got good length. When you turn on the film of Witherspoon, you think to yourself, like, boy, this guy could play for a long time in the National Football League. I think he can also play in the slot, but he's obviously a great outside corner, and I think that the Raiders take Witherspoon, the corner from Illinois. Now the Falcons are up, and I think that the Falcons need edge help. And you're looking at only 2 guys, and there might be more at this point, but 2 guys, at least in my mock, are off the board, and that's Tyree Wilson and Will Anderson. And so for me, Atlanta is looking at a guy kind of right down the road, certainly in the right region. Miles Murphy makes a lot of sense to me, the edge player from Clemson. So I'm looking at the Falcons. They can make themselves better on that side, and the Falcons need a lot of help everywhere. And so, could this be a wild card? Absolutely. How confident am I in the Miles Murphy pick to Atlanta? Not very, but to me it fits. It fits a need. He's obviously value right there. He's a wonderful player, and I think Atlanta goes with Miles Murphy. Then we go 9, the Bears. The Bears pick via that trade with Carolina. Okay, and now the Bears are sitting there, and they're like, hold on a second. There's a lot of draft boards that are going to have the guy I just talked about, Jalen Carter, as maybe even the best player in the draft. Now you're getting to a spot in the draft where you're like, we need defensive help on the interior, and you're saying that we can get what many people think is maybe the best talent in the overall draft, so we can trade out a number 1, get a ton of picks to build our roster, and still come away with what many think might be the best player in the draft or the second best player in the draft. Sign me up. And I think Chicago takes Jalen Carter. I obviously talked about everything with Jalen Carter that comes with him off the field, but at this selection, I think it makes some sense for Chicago. Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle for Georgia. Then we get to the 10th pick in the draft, and this one is like the freebie of all freebies. How about the Eagles via New Orleans? And they're sitting there, and when you really dive into the Eagles, they don't really have a need. Everybody else that has selected to this point, it's like they've got 5 or 6 needs, to be quite honest. But now the Eagles are sitting there. They're one of the most complete rosters in the entire NFL. So this is a freebie. Like, what a great spot if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, you can make an argument, and I toyed around with this, that this is a great time to trade. And I'm fine with that. If you think that this could be a trade, I'm totally fine with that. However, I love this. Got a big grin on my face. Why not just take the most dynamic player on the board? Why not just take the best offensive skill position player on the board? Pair him up with Jalen Hurts. Just so happens he's a running back. Why not Bijan to the Eagles? I mean, blow everybody's mind. That makes them better. That makes them better. It's not just a depth pick. It's not just a pick looking at, an aging, maybe offensive or defensive line. It's a pick saying we're one of the best teams in the National Football League right now, and this guy makes us better right now. It alleviates some of the pressure on Jalen Hurts because now he has an outlet immediately. There's another dynamic player that has to be defended side to side. You think of that system with some of the RPOs that they run, the creativeness of that offense, and you put a guy like Bijan Robinson on the Philadelphia Eagles, and I am in. This is why I love this pick. It's a totally free pick. Why not take the best player available on the board, Bijan Robinson, to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're immediately better as one of the best teams in the league already. All right, at number 11, the Tennessee Titans. I think they could go wide receiver. I think they also need help on the offensive line, and we haven't had an offensive lineman drafted. So the Tennessee Titans, in my mind, are sitting there, and they're thinking to themselves, hey, the best offensive lineman on our board, and this is, of course, using my board, is still there. So Peter Skoronski, the tackle from Northwestern, I've loved this guy for a long time. I remember he coming in as a freshman and playing really well opposite Rashawn Slater, and then Slater obviously didn't play in the COVID year. And Skoronski's been really good since he stepped foot on campus there at Northwestern. I love his game. I love his makeup. And I think he makes some sense for Tennessee. Now the Texans have their second pick, and this is via the trade with Cleveland, obviously. And the Texans are sitting there, and to me, they got their guy. They're going to get a quarterback at number 2. They ended up getting C.J. Stroud. Well, you know that they would like C.J. Stroud if this ends up happening, and that they would have vetted him thoroughly every single start that he made over 2 years. Why does that matter, Joel? Well, in his first year, who was the most dynamic player on the field alongside 2 guys that just shredded the NFL in their rookie seasons? Oh, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. So you can give my best wide receiver on the board to his college quarterback who's going to be our rookie quarterback? Sign me up. Jaxon Smith-Njigba of Ohio State goes to Houston. I really like this pick, pairing these guys up. They obviously have a great relationship. They've got a great timing. You're immediately getting a combination that's going to gel quicker at a young age than most, obviously. And you're getting a guy specifically that's not just the teammate of C.J. Stroud, but he's also a guy that I think is the best wide receiver in the draft. I don't care what he ran. I really don't. I think people, if you're hung up on what Jaxon Smith-Njigba ran in the 40, I think you're thinking about the wrong things. This guy is going to lead the league in receptions at some point in his first 3 or 4 years. I'd be surprised if an offensive coordinator is worth their salt at all. I think he has 75 catches as a rookie. I think if he's got a great quarterback, which in this instance it would be a rookie in C.J. Stroud. So I don't think he would get to the mark that I'm about to say, but let's just say, sake of argument, Smith-Njigba goes to some place with a veteran quarterback. I think he have 90 catches in his first year. He's that good. He understands space. He's got great hands. And when you talk to Garrett Wilson and when you talk to Chris Olave, who were those 2 guys that I said shred the NFL, obviously Garrett Wilson did exactly what he did in his rookie season. When you talk to those guys, Even they admit that the best player on that offense 2 years ago was Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Okay, so when you talk to the coaching staff there, I think people are sleeping on this guy. That's why he's my number one wide receiver, and I love him going to the Texans.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.